Okay, you guys, so this is a video on how I edit, my process, and my just flow in general. This is not going to be a editing tutorial for anyone who kind of was hoping to see that. I'm basically just going to be talking through my thought process and kind of my emotions on what I kind of rely on while I edit my photos, why I edit my photos the way that I do, and what are my intentions behind it. Now, for anyone who is watching who isn't a photographer and doesn't really have any idea on editing or photography in general, every photographer has the way that they edit, and it's very subjective and it just can vary. There's so many infinite variables of editing, and that's why it's just really important that photographers hone in on a specific way that they edit. And for me, I edit in a very certain way. So I just want to share with you my intentions and my motives behind why I edit. I think it's very important that photographers understand why they're editing and what colors and the tones that they're incorporating into their images. So for me personally, I am kind of motivated by the old and new, and I just love bringing a good balance between the both. So for me, I grew up with analog film and just learning to shoot on 35mm film camera, and that's just kind of my one true love with photography. Now, digital obviously has its perks, it's flexible, and there's so many things that you can do with a digital version of a photograph. But for me, film is always will be my one true love. And so the way that I edit is kind of this kind of half mix between digital and film. Digital being really clean and sharp, and film being a little bit more organic, gritty and soft. So that's like my big inspiration. I'm trying to marry those two. And then I have an undertone of a cinematic inspiration. I grew up watching a lot of movies, and a lot of movies that had incredibly and beautiful cinematography. I just kind of was inspired by that, and it just made me a lot more curious, I guess, to the story when things were lit and colors were shown in a certain way. So basically that's like my motivation, and that's what I kind of preface my preset, the way that I edit on. And with in terms of colors and stuff, like I'm just going to talk through it very briefly. I stay away from bright colors, I stay away from saturated colors, and I stay away from certain tones of colors, mainly like magenta and pink, and anything too saturated that's blue or orange or yellow, or even green, I stay away from. A lot of my photos are very muted, and the reason for that is I want my photos to be able to breathe. I want people to be able to really take in every aspect of every image. Whoa, just bumped my mic there. And I don't want any color, any bright light or anything to just overshadow the entire image. I think for me, I love when images have complexity and depth and character and richness, and I love to just stare at a certain image for a long time. I'd rather stare at a handful of images for 15 plus minutes and just soak in every detail of it than to glide over, 50 images that are very bright, pop and fun and in your face and, loud. So that's just kind of my, I guess, mood and vibe behind how I edit. And I want to just, preface that as a context before I jump into this. So if you've listened to me thus far, thank you very much. It's not easy being able to explain this whole process, but hopefully when we jump into it and you can see how I edit, you'll get a general feel of, my motivation and intention behind why I edit the way that I do. So without further ado, let's just jump into it and you'll discover on the way. Okay, so here are a series of images that I've selected for the video, and there are 7 images here, and I'm just going to go through it with you reasonably quick. Again, this is not a tutorial, so I've just got all my values here covered just to protect the integrity of my editing and my preset. And yeah, I'm just going to talk you through the process. So let's just start. This first one is photo of my friends Chris and Kirsty. I'm pretty sure they're engaged when we're doing this shoot, and I basically just said, hey, I'd love to kind of do a shoot with you guys for your engagement, and in return, like, would you be willing to just kind of go with the flow and shoot somewhere where I just have never done. I want to try different lighting styles and different camera techniques. And they were like, hell yeah, we're down. And I was like, great, meet me at a car park. And they met me at a car park, and this is where we shot, as you can see and tell. So in this scenario, I basically just wanted to work with direct light, light that is just not covered, not filtered. This is mid-afternoon pretty much, so this was classic harsh light coming in, and I basically just wanted to work with it because obviously I wanted to stretch my skills and just putting myself in different scenarios. And honestly, I loved how this shoot turned out, and this is one of my favorite images from it. Now I'm just going to apply my preset here, and as I stated before, my intentions for my editing is always to enhance the story of what's happening in the image. It's not to simply just make an image look good. That is not my intention. If I was to just make an image look good, I'd probably be editing very differently. I'm editing to specifically tell a story and communicate something. And my intentions are that I want to actually allow people to linger on an image for more than a few seconds. Now, traditionally from here, they are well exposed and well lit. What I don't like about the rest of the image is it's too dark. I don't like there being anything too dark or too bright in my images. As I stated, I love a good balance, and I'm gonna try and bring that balance back. So I'm gonna lift the shadows here a little bit, just so you can see a little bit of what's happening in the detail back here. And the reason I'm doing it is not because I think there's anything. That's a trolley, I'm pretty sure, but you can hardly make it out. What I want people to do is when they're looking at this image, I don't just want them to be focused just on here. I want them, as they're lingering, for their eyes to bounce back here and around, and just to gauge, well, where are they? What's the context? What's happening here? And for them to go back to this little moment here and going, you know what, actually this moment is great. Again, that's going to allow people to linger in an image for a few more seconds, which is going to leave a much more lasting impression, is my kind of intention. I'm going to crop this. I usually crop 5:7. It's not what everyone does. I like it. The proportions are a bit more pleasing to me. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I actually might even warm this up like a fraction more, just a touch more, because I know that afternoon sun was starting to get yellow, but it wasn't quite yellow. And that's legitimately what I would do before and after. And as you can see, the film aspect is kind of starting to show through here when you look at their skin, when you're looking at the highlights being preserved here, and the overall grittiness is what kind of is emulating that analog film look, and I love it. It's not clean and sharp, it's gritty and moody, and there's a bit more balance to it. Next up, this is the same shoot, and this is just a different way of lighting. As opposed to directly having lit them, I've now backlit them. They're generally sitting in the same area. I've just gone behind and I've just positioned them like this. And so I think I was shooting here in the previous image. So what to say about this image? I would say I was really trying to aim for something that was non-traditional. This is not something that a lot of photographers might gravitate towards, because obviously their faces are on the darker part of the image. However, this is how a lot of cinematographers might light a scenario. If you haven't noticed, there's a lot of cinematography shots that are always showcasing shadow side and having a faint light in the back. And that's like real life. That's a real life scenario, and that's why a lot of cinematographers use this lighting scenario, and it's a lot more moodier and it tells a different story. And so I love it. And as I said, part of my intention and inspiration is cinema, and so I chose to light it this way. And I think for this one I'm gonna go black and white. Boom, great. Immediately it's just so much more epic. I'm actually going to use a skin boost just to lift up the orange, red and yellows a little bit more. Now, if you're looking at this image, you think, okay, well, you can't really see them anymore. You can make out the shape. Maybe it's a cool silhouette image, but that's not my intention. I don't want this to be a silhouette. I want this to be just visible enough that it will keep your eye focused on what's happening here. And I want there to be just enough detail that you can sort of make it out and not think it's just a silhouette and it's a poorly lit photo. So I'm gonna lift up shadows here just a fraction, just to lighten up the overall shadow side here. And what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna make sure the skin is lit up just a little bit so you can see a bit more detail. Now they're not completely lit. You can tell that they're definitely on the more shadow side. And I'm just looking at over this corner here. I'm aware that if you look at this photo, maybe on a phone, you might not be able to always tell that with detail, if you get my meaning, just like that. So I'm gonna lift it up just a little bit more, just so you can actually tell on a photo, and you're gonna actually want to stare at this part for a little bit. Bring back the shadows a little bit overall. Okay, great. Now you're still looking at it and going, well, look, they seem a little bit too dark to me. And that's probably because compared to the rest of the image here, they are. And what happens with our eyes is when we're looking at a scenario, when we're looking at a real life scenario, or we're looking at a photograph or a video, our eyes travel to the brightest side of any given scene first. That's just how we are wired. And so your eyes are constantly comparing the rest of the image to how bright this part is. And that's probably why you're thinking it's still too dark. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove that distraction altogether. I'm going to go by my 5:7 crop. Normally people might even just leave it like this, and just to have this light for context. Sometimes people leave a certain light in a scene because it helps people connect with where the light is coming from, and it helps tell a story of that scene. For me right now, that's not my intention. My intention is to make sure that this particular mood is accentuated and highlighted. So I'm going to take away this light completely to remove that distraction that your eyes keep traveling to up here. And now the brightest part of the image is right here. What's happening right here? So that's where the eyes is going to linger, and you're going to figure out, okay, there's some detail here I can't quite make out, but you kind of keep looking at it to try and get in every little angle, every little shade, and then your eyes might travel to these little textures down here on the side, and then you might come back to this in the middle. And I've already kept you looking at my image for much longer than you expected. Again, I'm looking at it here on the side just to see whether you will actually be able to see everything. Probably not. So if I will probably double check this on my iPhone if I was to ever post it, and I would probably adjust accordingly. But if I was to post this on a website or printing it, I would leave it like this, obviously, because I can already see everything as I want it to be. All right, next up. Cool. This is a wedding that I shot in upstate New York, and it was very green and very lush. It was summer, and I had never seen anything like it. Because in Australia, there's a lot of dark greens everywhere. We don't really get any light greens. I would say upstate New York, it's more evergreen, if you know what that color is. And it's the same tone. That's what tripped me out. Every leaves on the tree, grass, they're all the same tone. Australia, you definitely have different shades of dark greens. But yeah, upstate New York, every tree was the same color, exact same color. Anyway, these are my friends Al and Tara, and I love this moment, mainly because I love that moment before the kiss. I'm always looking out for it. I think there's something that is just so magical and romantic, and there's just a lot of chemistry, just the way that people expect and anticipate the kiss. Their body language changes in that split second just before they actually kiss. And so that's why I am showcasing this image, and that's why I was trying to keep an eye out for it. And I just love how Tara is just expecting that kiss. And I don't know, it just gives me the feels and the chills. So I'm gonna, you know what, my gut says, even though there's a lot of green and whatnot, my gut says I really just want to draw this bit in. So I'm gonna go black and white. And I'm actually gonna go skin boost again, just to lift up the skin. Now her skin is looking a bit too dark, unrealistically dark. So I'm just gonna bring up the lightness of it, just so it looks a bit more realistic, and it would be how it would look if the light was hitting her skin. Immediately, I love it. Again, there's a bit too dark spots around in the background. I don't want that. I want there to be a bit more balance in the image. I'm just going to highlight that spot and bring it up, just so you can see that there's a bit more texture and foliage in the background. And overall, this image is a little bit more balanced. I love the light hitting her chest. It's perfect. And in fact, I'm going to crop this by 5:7. And I'm going to draw in on them a little bit more, but I'm going to leave this light on the corner here. I want people to understand that there is a little bit of light flare coming through, and what it's highlighting is here. And I like that, and I think it's sexy. I think there's a lot of chemistry. I think there's a lot of mood. Yeah, love it. Next up, here is a image of a wedding that I shot in January last year. And it was during the bushfires, but this part of the property that we were at, where there was a lookout, it was untouched. So it was quite beautiful to be there. Kat and Jono, they had such a great day. It was very cold in January, which is really weird. I remember it being like, I think 12 degrees, and it was just so cold. Anyway, I love the scene. This was shot just after the sun has set, which is one of my most favorite time of the day to shoot, because the light is kind of this weird bluish hue, and it complements the skin tone so well. And the light is just at its softest before it kind of fades away completely. So this was during that time, and I'm gonna go color, because I think color is just gonna bring. Again, love it. Absolutely love it. You can see that I've taken away a lot of the pink tones. I don't like pink tones. The blue is pretty much gone from the sky. I don't want that distracting what's going on here. And I love it. I absolutely love it. If anything, I might cool it down just a fraction, because I think some of the skin tones with the nature green here, I just want there to be a bit more of a balance, playing off each other, and not, everything being yellow and warm, if that makes sense. So I'm just going to cool it off so you can tell that this time of the day is reasonably cool. It wasn't like that afternoon glow sunset vibes. I'm going to crop that just there, and I'm gonna make sure the couple are a bit more straight standing, because I think I was like balancing on a rock. Awesome. One tiny itty bitty bit thing that I am super particular on is skin tones, and I don't mind the skin tones here. I think cat skin is beautiful, I just know that they're a little bit too orange for me to feel like it's realistic. So I'm just gonna make sure that I bring back like a fraction of the more pink tones, just like that. And now her skin looks a lot more realistic. It's natural, but it is a nice skin tone, if that makes sense. With skin tones, I'm trying to make it look realistic to the eye, but I'm also trying to enhance it so there isn't any discrepancy, with red blotches and people's skin being too pale. And I think this is just the right amount. And yeah, that's great. I love how the green tone is playing here. The green undertone is working really well with this landscape, and I just love this mood. The highlights are perfect. I might bring it back just fraction, just so with the dress you can see a bit more detail. And yeah, great. All right, here are my friends, my beautiful friends, Loz and Reese, and we took this at Reese's birthday. We just randomly, my mate Keegan and I turned up, picked Reese and Loz up from the hotel in Sydney, and I drove them to my favorite spot ever in Sydney. And I go here so much on my personal time, and I take a lot of clients here as well. It's in a tall cliff edge by the ocean, and you get some epic sunsets. I just took a couple of images for them, and I love it. Traditionally, my regular preset would look like this, and I would probably, bring back a little bit of pink, bounce it out and warm it up a little bit more. And I would relatively stay around this, maybe bring up the shadows just a bit more. This is how I would have edited it, but I actually used my new preset that I was working on to give to these guys. So I'll just try that. There you go. So this preset is, how should I explain it? The intention for this preset, the intention and inspiration for this preset is that I'm actually leaning more into the cinematic side of things. My previous preset, I'm leaning more into the film, the balance of film and digital with an undertone of cinema in terms of lighting. But here, I'm actually utilizing a lot more cinematic colors, as well as using something that's a lot more balanced and low contrast. I don't like poppy images. I don't like images with high contrast. I love low contrast and soft images, and that's what a lot of cinema lighting is, and cinema editing as well. The one thing I would change in this image that I still haven't been able to tweak yet, you won't notice it unless you're a photographer, or maybe you might not. Whenever you photograph anything white, like a white dress, white sheets, curtains, sometimes even clouds and shirts, there's always a blue hue, blue tinge there. And I don't like it. I don't like blue. I don't like blue skies. If I do take photographs of blue skies, I make sure it's reasonably desaturated and a specific tone of blue. But I don't like deep blue. I don't like more purpley blue, and I don't like saturated blue. I just think it's too heavy. So I'm gonna take this blue out of the equation, and I want you to just see what happens when I do that. Now immediately your eyes have more room to breathe, and you're actually gonna focus on this moment right here. And I want to be able to show you the difference. So I'm gonna bring the blue back entirely. Boom. There's blue. And then there is without the blue. This is a bit more natural. Again, it's a white shirt. It shouldn't be a blue shirt. But more importantly, the blue was actually dominating and actually, in my eyes, fighting what's happening here, right here, the color, the mood, and it was kind of like dragging it down, and I just didn't want it. So took it away. Now it's just a bit more clean. Your eyes kind of ease over it, and it's more focused on what's happening right here. one pet peeve that I always have that I'm trying to actually should have done here is I hate it when the horizon is slightly slanted. I can't, obviously, there you go, perfect. Much easier in the eyes. Great. Next up. So here is a photo from a family session that I did, or a family journal as I call it, of my friend Marin and her son Bowden, or Bowdy as they call him. Honestly, this was, I don't know, just one of those unexpected things to happen. Marin was actually saying how just her lounge room just space was just a bit average, nothing really special. Nothing too fancy in there, and I was like, you know what, it's a space where you guys spend a lot of time, so let's just go and just get you guys to spend time there and see what we can get. I'm not too fast. And then as I kind of drew this curtains back to diffuse some light, Marin was fidgeting with the like a shutter blind, and she was like moving it up and down to see if we can get a bit more light in it, and he just showed this really streak of light coming through, and I was like, this is beautiful. So I just sat them right there. This is a classic cinematic lighting. In cinema, there's always an intention and motive to try and set as much depth to a scene as possible, and your eyes perceive depth by the light and the darkness. So by having something really light in the foreground here, and then there being dark patch here, and then light in the background, your eye is building like a more of a 3D image in the way that it interacts with this photo or a scene. So that's why this looks pleasing. Okay, so I'm gonna use my color preset here. Boom. Now, as you can already tell, a lot of the pinkish hues have gone, and a lot of colors just kind of fell into this one overall kind of greenish tone, and then these guys obviously have been highlighted. I'm going to bring back a little bit of highlights just so you can see a bit more detail here. I'm going to do my 5:7 crop, and that's literally it. I might actually bring down the contrast a little bit, soften it out just a fraction, not too much, just a fraction, just to soften out the image just a little bit more. And yeah, perfect. This is just an example of how even one good light could change the whole scene, and I love it. I love that it looks like a scene from a movie, and I've gotten a lot of feedback and compliments from it, and it's just because of this one light coming through. So who knew? Okay, last one. So this one I took last weekend, and it was cold and foggy AF in the mountains. It's really unnatural because it's January, and in Australia it should be scorching hot, filthy scorching hot in January, and it was not the case. We had a lot of rain, it was cold, and it was very misty, which I love. I love eeriness. It just triggers a sense of wanderlust. Eerie forest, it's cool. It's very rare in Australia, so it just doesn't feel like something you would see in Australia, which is why I love it. I think I tried my new preset in trial for this one, and I'm gonna just darken that up heaps. Obviously, I like that. It's a bit too warm. There's a bit too much warm tones happening here, and it doesn't really connect with the image. The image is cold, and it was cold, and so I'm just gonna cool it down just a little bit, just to let the cooler tones come through. Perfect. And I'm gonna get rid of I'm still seeing a bit more pink tones. I'm gonna introduce a little bit more green, just a fraction. Awesome. Now it looks a bit more real, also looks a bit more cinematic. I'm not a fan of what's happening on the side here. I think there's too much detail. There is such a thing as too much detail, and so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to darken it up just here on the edges. And that's just basically making sure that people's eyes aren't drawn to that as much. Now everyone's eyes are drawn here. What I'm gonna do right here is gonna make sure you can see a bit more detail. Boom. And I think that's good. Boom. Boom. I like it. I like it. It's very ethereal, whimsical, eerie, moody. I love it. Okay, guys. Well, thank you for just sitting through that. I know that it's a lot to take in if you're not in the photography realm and you haven't really gotten used to all the different facets of what editing entails. But that's just the gist of how I edit. Hopefully you've learned a little bit about my motives and intentions behind my photos. I think it helps when you understand someone's context and intentions and motives behind why they do what they do. And certainly I've tried my best to explain mine. So hopefully that will bring a bit more depth and value to the way that you look at my photographs. Now, if you would like for me to answer any questions, you're of course more than welcome to. If you just watched it for the fun of it and you just wanted to kind of get inside my head, that's great. Leave me a comment and let me know your thoughts. Or if you are a photographer and you really loved the info that I was covering, but you wanted to learn more in detail, of course, leave me a comment. And if I get enough, then I might create more videos in the future. But for now, I hope you enjoyed it. And I hope to be able to share more photos that allow you to linger and allow you to just really absorb every detail and facet of it. And I hope to be able to push boundaries and also tell creative stories that just go beyond the photographs themselves. So thank you, and I'll see you soon.